Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. You know, I was thinking so much today about Bill Walton, the passing of the great Bill Walton. So I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, you know that. So the first time I watched basketball was 72, 73. The Lakers had Weston Goodrich, a very old wilt. They were very good back then. So I don't remember the Knicks winning a championship. That was like 71, 72. I started watching TV in 72. I was like 7, 8 years old. So I remember the old West Goodrich Lakers, the 77 Blazers, the 76 Sonics, the Warriors in about 77, 78 won a title, Washington with Elvin Hayes, Wes Unfeld. But Bill Walton really was, for people your age, you're more of a basketball encyclopedia, but he was pre-Jokic. That's what he played like. And I said this today on Fox Sports, that if Walton didn't have injuries, I think there'd be a debate today. He would be in the debate for the second best center to Kareem of all time. I feel that strongly. He wouldn't have been the scorer of Kareem. First of all, he's a consensus 3-time player of the year in college basketball, not an All-American. And remember, in the era back then, it was full of NBA guys. He was the consensus player of the year 3 straight times. So there's that. The second thing was that Portland team really was not terribly talented offensively. It was a lot of Dave Twardzik and Henry Steele and Maurice Lucas. So, I mean, to win was very much about Bill Walton. But I thought one of the interesting things was that we've talked about this before. It's surprising how often many of the great players in basketball have such unique games. Now, Kobe clearly copied a lot of Michael. But generally, nobody played like Kareem. Nobody played like George Gervin. There was no pre-bird to bird. LeBron was a Swiss Army knife. Magic was totally unique. Bill Walton was unique. There was no Arvydas Sabonis. He was the first player that came out and would gladly, I mean, if the Blazers would have had multiple great offensive players, he would have been more robust and dynamic as a distributor. But Walton, and I remember watching him, the games weren't national. Remember, you only got like the finals national, and that was on tape delay. So you didn't get the regionalization. And I lived 2 hours between Seattle and Portland, but we got Sonic games. So like, unless I went to Portland or they were on the Sunday game with CBS Brent Musburg, you didn't see Walton. So I only probably saw him 6 to 7 to 8 times, most of it against the Sixers in the finals. And I just remember thinking, the hair, the headband, I'm like, I've never seen anything like that. Even as a kid, you're like, what is that? You know, he had this, he almost shot it like a guard, the way he had his hands perfect. So there are certain things in life as an old guy I wish young people could have seen. I've said this before. I wish people in their 20s understood how great boxing was 40 years ago. Just how great it was, like the Super Bowl. And when Bill Walton passed, he touched so many lives. So many of the things on the feedback today on the internet were so touching. I think Bill Walton would have worked today. He really is a today player. There's my take. He was 40 to 50 years ahead of his time. A lot of people are 8 to 10 years ahead of their time. I honestly think Walton was 50 years ahead of his time. Who do you have a player that you watched when you were 8, 9 years old that literally is imprinted? Dr. J and Bill Walton stand out to me.
You know, LeBron was always that for me when I was growing up. And it's very interesting because the way you put it, it kind of piggybacks off what we talked about last week, in the sense that like all of these all-time greats, they're almost all weird. There's like a weird element to them. And I agree with you that Bill Walton, I think, would have done really well in today's NBA because he was that connective piece. And so many NBA teams now are running 5-out offense, which I'm not going to get into it, but the gist of it is it depends on a big guy that can make decisions, that can set screens and read the floor. The ball's in the big guy's hands a lot in a lot of these modern NBA offenses, right? And like, you know, it's funny though, for me, Bill Walton, for everything mostly comes down to what he was as a broadcaster. Which is weird and quirky. What's so funny is I had a buddy, his name was Matt Korchak. He played at the University of Arizona, and I remember He registered there one year and he played behind those awesome front lines with like Aaron Gordon and Stanley Johnson and Caleb Tarczewski. And then, but I remember he came off the bench for those guys. He had a big game against Stanford on the road, and I remember he got a throw it down big man one time from Bill Walton on the call, and like me and my buddies were razzing him about that forever because that's like the dream. Like you got Bill Walton talking about you being the big man dunking down the lane. Like he just was always iconic as a broadcaster, and like he always just brought this insane energy
Right.
to that environment. Even when you'd go to McHale Center, because I used to go to a lot of University of Arizona games, like you'd sit up there and you'd actually see him on the sideline, and he'd stand out from the crowd because he's so damn tall, and he's like waving his arms and he's getting all active. And
Well, we are getting closer to crowning an NBA champ, and with the action heating up on the court, hotter than ever, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. It's great. I've got it. You should. Takes less than 90 seconds. Official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. Okay, now we got the conference finals. Pacers, Celtics, T-Wolves, Dallas Mavericks. These games have been so great. Live betting, same game parlays, odds boosts. So much is covered. It's super easy for first timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like a team to win. So you go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, again, download it 90 seconds, select your squad, place your bet. It's that simple. Okay, new to DraftKings. It's called No Sweat Bet. This is a new one. It's easy, called No Sweat Bet, up to $1,500. Just deposit at least $5. That's it, $5, a 5 spot. That's it. And you'll get a bonus bet back if your bet doesn't hit. Yeah, I said it right. If your bet doesn't hit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. The code is Colin. That's me, Colin. DraftKings Sportsbook app, download Colin, Colin, new customers, no sweat bet, up to $1,500 you get if you just deposit $5 and your first bet doesn't hit. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. And Jason, he also was ahead of his time. He was very much against the Vietnam War. He was sit-ins on UCLA's campus. Like he was, we had some track and field athletes that were socially conscious. Bill was one of the first outspoken athletes I can remember. There's a great story about him. So he was close to John Wooden until John Wooden's passing. John, a very humble man, lived in a very Bill Plaschke of the LA Times wrote about it today that Walton would call him a couple of times a week, and he called him on his 90th birthday, and Plaschke was there, and John Wooden said, I don't do much of the talking, but Bill calls regularly, and he goes, just no more enjoyable phone call I get than a couple of times a week from Bill Walton. But when he got to UCLA, Walton wouldn't cut his hair. And so he said, Coach, you're very iconoclastic. I'm not going to cut my hair. And John Wooden said, well, we'll miss you. So Bill got in his bicycle and bicycled across campus to a barber. But we lost. I went to watch YouTube highlights of Bill Walton today. I went back, and I do this when somebody passes. Could be Glenn Fry of the Eagles, or anybody in sports. And Bill today, I sat there before the Celtics game for about 30 minutes, and I went back and watched some college stuff and then his Blazers stuff. And for a kid from the Northwest, Bill was really special.